This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. I bet you're right about now. Rudy Giuliani's new trial lawyer in the District of Columbia defamation case, seeking tens of millions of dollars against Rudy for having defamed terribly, relentlessly, mother-daughter election workers Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss. I bet you're right about now he'd like to dig a hole and disappear because things are going so badly for him that in order to defend his client, he's had to throw his client under the bus and take his licks in front of Judge Beryl Howell, who's about to either throw Rudy Giuliani in the federal detention center or double or triple the award against him for his misconduct and potential perjury. Yes, the P word came up during the trial today with the jury excluded in an exchange, an extraordinary exchange between Joe Sibley, the new trial lawyer for Rudy Giuliani, and Judge Beryl Howell. What's going on and what did the judge say? That's what this hot take is all about. And by the way, we're only in the second day of trial, and already Rudy Giuliani has found a way to get completely sideways with a judge who's already sanctioned him half a dozen times leading up to the day of trial. Well, it doesn't help, Rudy, when you take a page out of your mentor and cult leader's book and you decide, like Donald Trump, you're going to be able to go on the courthouse steps and lie and tell the public and social media universe that you're going to take the stand and deny that the statements made against Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss, in which you accuse them of voter fraud, were untrue, exactly against the orders already and findings already of the judge. Before the trial even started, before day one, Judge Beryl Howell already found that Rudy Giuliani and his statements defamed Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman. That defamation happened. They're not public figures. You don't have to show actual malice, the heightened standard for public figures. Good old-fashioned defamation. And that the only issue left, he can't argue that he's not liable. He can't tell the jury that he doesn't have money. He can't tell them that he didn't make false statements. This is just about how big of a check this DC jury is going to award Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss. But Rudy Giuliani decided, since he can't say it in the courtroom, he's going to go lie on national TV and social media on the courthouse steps and tell everybody that he didn't do it, that there wasn't a lie. He didn't defame them. It wasn't false. It was false. It wasn't false. Sorry, it was all true. They really did commit voter fraud. So the judge earlier said, what's your client doing? What's your client doing? He's defaming them again? And then it got even more serious because the lawyers for Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss brought a motion. We call it a motion in limine or a motion to preclude, to stop, if Rudy Giuliani ever decides to take the stand, to stop him from telling the jury things that the judge has already ruled he can't tell them. In other words, stop the mistrial, this slow motion mistrial that we're watching with Rudy Giuliani. He obviously wants to throw over the game board. He hates the jury. He hates the jury that's been chosen. He never wanted a jury. He wanted this judge, who doesn't like him very much, to make the ruling on the size of the check, hoping he could throw the mercy on the court. So he wants to, do anything he can to throw a monkey wrench and throw sand in the gears of this process. And the plaintiff's lawyers are fighting tooth and nail to make sure this trial stays on track and we get to a jury verdict with the jurors. So the judge is in the middle because she has the power, the sole power, the inherent authority to control the way the trial operates and all the actions of all the trial participants. And she had a dialogue today that was extraordinary with Joe Sibley. I've been involved with a lot of federal trials. I've never heard one go quite like this. And Joe Sibley sort of looking around, hoping he could, what was it, a Snickers commercial? Not going anywhere. It's time for a Snickers. That was Joe Sibley. He basically said he said out loud that Rudy Giuliani's like pushing 80 and that this trial is taking a toll on him and he can't control his client. He can't control what he says. He doesn't agree with the things that he said because the judge said to Sibley, I don't get it. You said in your opening, for instance, that they are not to blame, the plaintiffs, that they're good people. And then your client is saying the exact opposite out on the courthouse steps for a whole nother audience, apparently. What gives? And he said, I can't control my client. I just can't control him. And the judge made it even easier because she drew a line in the sand. And she told Sibley, if your client takes the stand and tries to violate my order and tries to testify and attack Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss, that's going to be perjury. And maybe we're looking at some criminal sanctions. So particularly, here's the exchange. This is what the judge said to him. She said that she, and this is, let me just set another context here. This judge knows everything about Jan 6th and knows everything about what happened leading up to Jan 6th and the attempt to stop the peaceful transition and the tools that were used. Why? Because for most of the prosecutions related to Jan 6, including Donald Trump, she was the presiding judge as the chief judge of the DC court, DC Circuit Court. She presided over all the grand juries, all the secret grand juries. She made all the decisions about stripping Donald Trump and others of their attorney-client privilege and forcing lawyers for Donald Trump to testify against him. That was her. So she knows this case really, really well. I'm not sure there's a worse draw than the presiding judge in this case for Rudy Giuliani. And she said out loud to Sibley today in court, given all the Georgia official investigations showing those were false statements. In other words, Georgia already investigated Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss and the whole scenario at the Fulton County Convention Center. And the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the GBI, and the Secretary of State of Georgia's investigative unit totally cleared them. The thumb drive that had votes for Biden on it that they were inserting into machines, that was a breath mint. Okay? The ballots that they were counting and bringing in with a suitcase and sticking and stuffing the ballot box for Biden, those were already counted ballots that were being put into a locked cabinet and a locked case underneath their desk, and so on and so on. And so the judge, referring to that, and that all wrongdoing was cleared by the Bureau of Investigation, said, given all the Georgia official investigations showing those were false statements, the ones your client made about them committing voter fraud, at worst, he, Rudy Giuliani, is perjuring himself to play to some other audience, the audience for his social media outlets. This is the judge, Judge Beryl Howell, to Joe Sibley, the lawyer for Rudy Giuliani. The judge went on. She pressed Sibley to explain Giuliani's change in his opinion, asking if he was just playing for the media in his remarks. And here's where Sibley responded that he was unsure what was going on, but speculated that a toll was being taken on the mental facilities of Rudy Giuliani because he's an 80-year-old. That's interesting. Tuesday's exchange, that exchange I just described, came during that trial. And the lawyers on the plaintiff's side scrambling to try to keep the trial on track and avoid a mistrial. Look, they've already had, the lawyers for Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss, at least 3 or 4 opportunities already to ask for a mistrial, but they don't want the mistrial. They don't want to throw this jury out. This jury, they want to get through the testimony, put on the evidence, and get to their writing a check for $40 or $50 million in favor of Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss. Plain and simple. I've been in this position. I've been in the position as a trial lawyer where the case was going great for me. And I liked my jury, and I liked my judge, and I liked my rulings, and I liked my evidence, and I liked how the witnesses were going. And I ignored a couple of instances that would have been a mistrial if I wanted it. I had one case where the judge looked at me and said, basically, do you want a mistrial? And I said, no. And I had a fight to keep the case on track as the judge, almost on his own, sua sponte, as they say, granted a mistrial I hadn't even asked for. I did not want that. And I was right. I won't tell you exactly how that case came out, but it came out great. That's what's going on right now with the lawyers for Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss. They don't want a mistrial. They like their jury. They like their chances. And they've got Grandpa Rudy, whether feigned mental incapacity or real, trying to derail this case. And they're doing everything they can, working with Judge Beryl Howell to make sure that doesn't happen. I am sure this is not the last hot take that we're gonna do here on the MeidasTouch Network, where we're going to observe acting out and antics in violation of court orders by Rudy Giuliani. It's not. Mark it down. We're going to do 2 of these a day. And this case is somehow going to reach the finish line without a mistrial. The only thing that would stop that, and that's what the judge was warning Joe Sibley today about his client, is that if he takes the stand and he says outrageous things in violation of court order, he'll be in contempt. He could be prosecuted for perjury. There could be a referral by the judge. He could end up in the federal detention center. And then the judge has to figure out with the plaintiff's lawyers whether a fair trial can continue with some what we call curative instructions given by the judge to the jury. So there's always a lot of times bad things may happen during a trial, but you can fix it. You can fix it because the judge gives an instruction. It's called a curative instruction. It fixes things to address it. But sometimes things are just so outlandish and so bad and so untoward that they can't be fixed with a curative instruction. And that's the race that's going on right now. It's a race to the finish. It's a race to the bottom for Rudy Giuliani and Joe Sibley. It's a race to the finish line, to try to get this case as quickly as possible done. In fact, if I were the trial lawyers, and I'm sure I'm not telling them anything they haven't thought of, move this along. The velocity of this case is important. You may want to put on 10 witnesses to prove the same point. You don't need it. Do 1 or 2 witnesses, get in and get out. You got to do guerrilla tactics at this point because you got to outrace Rudy's craziness. Let me repeat, you got to outrace Rudy's craziness to get to the finish line and get to that jury before there's another mistrial, one that the judge can't ignore. And we don't want that to happen and start all over again. And then justice delayed is justice denied for Rudy Freeman and Shaye Moss. Somebody said to me recently on Legal AF, well, Rudy probably doesn't have the money. It'll be a paper judgment. I don't think so. Rudy's got a very nice apartment on the Upper East Side of New York. I think Rudy Freeman and Shaye Moss would look terrific coming out of that apartment. He's got a condominium near Mar-a-Lago in Florida. I think they would look lovely having that as a vacation home. Or sell it and take the money. Whatever it is. Rudy Giuliani's not dead. He's not a lawyer, but he's a podcaster. He's a social media whatever. He makes maybe $100,000 or more a month. That can be garnished. Those wages can be garnished, and he can continue to take $50,000 or $100,000 a month out of his earnings and send it to Rudy Freeman and Shaye Moss until their $50 million judgment is paid off, and they can take the watch off his wrist and I know some stuff. His humidor at a cigar bar in New York, they can take that away from him. Whatever assets he has, including ones he's probably dumped off into dummy and straw man positions, they can go after it. And they will go after it. They're represented by some very good lawyers. So I'm going to follow it here on the MeidasTouch Network. Only one place, on Legal AF. We sit at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, so you don't have to. And we do a show on a full podcast, an hour long, Wednesdays, Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I do it with my co-founder, Ben Meiselas, on Saturdays. I do it with a good friend and former prosecutor, Karen Freeman-McNifilo, on Wednesdays. Give me a thumbs up. It really does help with the ratings and the reviews and keeps us on the air. Free subscribe to the MeidasTouch Network. Help them get to 2 million free subscribers before 2024. It's that important. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.